business owner and entrepreneur, what if you could actually build your business and create really significant success around your strengths? I know it's something that gets talked about all the time. Do more what you love, do the things you're passionate about and the money will follow. But truly, there's a real skill and a lot of shifting that we do to power up our business results if we can lead with our strengths. Hi, I'm Melanie Benson-Strick, and I'm a small business optimizer and a profit strategist for visionary entrepreneurs and small business owners who are building a really massive a business based on their massive passion in the world. And each week I interview somebody who has a strategy or a tip that I think will help you get better results, make your business perform better, and allow you to have more joy and fulfillment from your business. So this week, I want to introduce you to somebody that I know through Women Speakers Association, which is an organization I'm heavily involved in, and that's Natalie Currie. And Natalie is a professional executive leadership coach. She facilitates powerful experiences for her clients and is a speaker who helps individuals, teams, and organizations thrive in the new world of work. And I have to say, I recently had a really powerful experience of Natalie as she facilitated a experience for the leadership team at Women Speakers Association to go through the strengths process. And it was very illuminating. It was very eye-opening. And I thought, I know there's other business owners that could really benefit from this particular approach to getting into our strengths. So Natalie, thanks so much for agreeing to come on today and talk about the strengths approach to success. I almost feel like there's a book that should be called The Strengths Approach to Success.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Melanie.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, Natalie, just give us a quick snapshot of the type of work that you're doing with your clients these days.
Yeah, I do a number of things. It's all really in service of them to help them thrive. The world is changing, work and otherwise. And I've dedicated my organizational development practice to supporting individuals and teams within organizations to help them really do their very best work under almost constantly changing conditions, so they can really leverage their talents and their passions and their strengths, of course, as you've already alluded, to really put out the best work that they can in the world.
Yeah, and I think many of us in our minds, when we think about this in Fortune 500 companies or really big organizations, it's obvious that we have to do that. Well, what sometimes we don't think about as an entrepreneur is how much more valuable this is to us, because we don't necessarily have the same level of resources and financial means to course correct. So anything you can do to make your team and yourself perform at that premium level is a very valuable investment of learning and maybe even time and money. So I just feel like we should all understand what the strengths-based approach is. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is and how maybe you got into doing stuff around strengths?
Yeah, happy to, Melanie. Well, the strengths-based approach is a scientific methodology, and its roots are in the very early days of applied positive psychology, which is one of the newest forms of science, one of the newest forms of psychology, in which it looks at who we are as human beings when we're at our very best. Mm-hmm. So when you think about strengths, it's more about ways of being and how we show up in the world rather than things that we do. So often when we think of strengths, we think of talents. Yes. And of course, talents are very important, whether we're good at coding or coaching or speaking, but we really need to think about what kinds of things do we do that energize us, what lights us up, what makes us feel really empowered to go out and do some of the things that we're great at doing and some of the things that we need to as small business owners do, in spite of the fact they may not be our talents or our passions. So roots in positive psychology, and it's really about thinking about who we are when we're at our best.
Yeah, and what we mean by that, is it the being from the brain, or is it the doing, like things that we're doing, or is it both?
It's actually both. It's a combination of ways of thinking about things and then ways of engaging that thinking within our businesses and our lives. So it's a combination for sure.
So, for me, I was actually really surprised at the different types of strengths that this process measures and reflects back to someone. Could you give us an example of some of the categories of strengths that you help people understand about themselves and their teams.
Yeah, and there's a number of different strengths approach. There's no one size fits all. The one that we use with Women Speakers Association is called the VIA, VIA. And the reason I like this tool, I have no financial interest in it whatsoever, but I love it because it's scientifically validated. It's been used by 2.6 million people. So we have a lot of really rich data on it. And I love it because the individual report is free, complimentary online. It's a self-report tool. And so it offers us a chance to really look into ourselves in a way that we often don't, because we're often very weakness or deficit focused, right? We often think about things that we need to do better and things we need to shore up and how do we get better at things we're not good at. And we know we never get really, really good at things that we're not good at. So if we focus on strengths, that's the way to sort of capitalize and leverage on what we're good at. Yeah. So there's within this methodology of VIA character strengths, it's really looking at a variety of different, it's really 24 character strengths that it looks at. And about 55 psychologists over a period of 4 or 5 years went looking through the annals of history. So these are considered sort of the 24 virtues, if you will, or characters, if you will, that are seen across culturally and throughout history to represent a life well lived. And while we have all 24 of them within us, it's sort of like a tool belt. We sort of carry around a certain set of tools that we sort of bring out of our toolkit and use more frequently than others. And when we're using those tools, that's usually when we're at our best. We're energized, time flies by. We're just feeling really excited and happy about what we're doing. And it seems really easy. So I think the challenge with a lot of people is they often take these things for granted. And it's only in a team environment that you can kind of call that out, saying, you know, right, that sense of bravery or that sense of perseverance or that sense of honesty is really important in our team, and we need to have more of that.
Yeah. And I know that many of us think of strengths as I'm good at writing, or I'm good at project management, or I'm good at marketing, right? Like this really kind of went underneath that. And like you said, it kind of looks at the character strengths and how that kind of influences activity. So it was actually quite surprising what I learned about myself, because things that I thought I would have scored higher on, I not that I didn't score well on them, but it was like, wow, okay, that's where I lead. That was really interesting. But you actually said something that I want to go back to, and it was that many of us focus on trying to make our weaknesses better. And I think this is something that's worth exploring a little bit more, because there's a lot of information out there. There are some people that say focus on your strengths, delegate the rest. I'm super huge fan of that. There are people that say, don't let a weakness, be your weakness, and that there's a lot of value in strengthening those and learning how to get better at them. So what does the strengths-based approach say to us about our weaker areas and what we want to do to create growth?
Well, we can't be all things to all people, and I think that's when we become frustrated as individuals and as business owners, when we try to be all things to all people. And I think the other important consideration in this is that, again, we know from data, Marcus Buckingham in particular, from the Marcus Buckingham Company, that we don't get better at them, that they're actually very draining, that they take a lot of our sort of cognitive and physical resources away from us. So when we're actually focusing on those, we're actually taking away from a lot of the good that we could be doing. And you mentioned a really good point, Melanie, around tasks, project management, writing, those kinds of things. So it's really about taking what you're good at, how you show up in the world, and applying them to those tasks. So it's not about the task itself, but it's about how you do that. And sometimes what you can do is to take a strength and apply that to an area where you would like some growth. So rather than think about it as a weakness. So let's just say, for example, I'll use myself as an example, love of learning is my great strength. Mm-hmm. When I overuse that, I get completely lost in the data. It's data overload, and I never want to finish. And so it can hinder me, certainly as a business owner, when you need to move forward in shipping and get products and services out to customers and clients. So it's about thinking about, okay, so what other strength could I use? One of my top strengths is humor. So I'm a little bit light and playful with that. And I say, okay, is it time to cut things off now? Is the love of learning now no longer serving me or my business? And do I need to see a different way of doing that? So I keep a very light and humorous approach to it, or else I can get really heavy in the data. So it's sometimes just sort of shifting things a little bit. Again, it's a reframe. It's a different type of lens to look through life through. We don't often have to worry about our weaknesses. We can usually carry on quite successfully. Very, very successful entrepreneurs and business owners do quite well readily identifying what areas that they're not strong in, because as you mentioned, you can hire for that skill, or you can think of another creative way of getting that work done.
I love that reframe because, oh my gosh, so many business owners get stuck in like, oh, I'm not good at this. And this is, I'm not good at marketing and selling. Like, really, that's what a lot of people tell themselves. And even though everybody can strengthen that, some people are just like, that's not what lights them up. So, yes, you can delegate it, or maybe you go to one of your other strengths. This is liberating. So if you're not ready to build a team yet, then it's not hopeless. You go to another strength and figure out how to use that to move through getting those things done. Natalie, we're kind of tapping into this idea of teams. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs or people who are maybe been really good at their craft and they get thrust into being in that leader role, they have no idea what they're doing. And now you've got all these people who you're hiring, and either it's going great or you're finding, wow, there's a lot of breakdowns and, am I hiring the right people? It feels like I'm having to manage them a lot. How does the strengths approach factor into how we build a team and how we lead a team?
I think this is where the real crux of where strengths can really have a huge impact on organizations and teams. The first thing I caution is that the folks at VIA say that it is not a recruitment tool.
Yes, I would agree.
It's not really about, whether you're good at a certain task. So you hire for that task, you hire for fit, you hire for all the things you would in an organization or on a team in a small business. But then it's about really, it's a super opportunity for an onboarding exercise. And I've seen groups do this really, really successfully with a lot of energy. So they bring an individual on the team. As part of their onboarding, they talk about their values, they talk about strengths. And so early on in that sort of onboarding process, the new hire, the new individual being brought onto the team, can really feel a sense of ownership of who they are in terms of their strengths. They can sort of see how they're going to fit into the organization from a strengths-based perspective. They'll get to know their teammates in a very different way if they understand their strengths as well. So it's a real opportunity to really, again, foster this very positive energy. Mm-hmm. And, onboarding can be a really kind of scary proposition for a lot of people. Yeah. There's a lot of rigor around it. It can be kind of heavy. This sort of lightens it up. And again, it really affirms the person and the team members. And I think what's great about the team is that we don't need to be all things to all people as individuals. We do have at our avail lots of opportunities in terms of leveraging those strengths that are complementary within the team. So if you've got 5 or 10 people on a team, even 3, you probably have a really good cross-section of strengths to draw upon. And so it's a great opportunity to sort of hand off strengths. So if you have love of learning versus love of say, prudence, which means you're a little bit cautious and you want to have that sober second thought, what an opportunity to dovetail those two to really produce the best products and services that we can. And then everybody's happy. You have better quality product at the end, and people are doing things that bring them great joy.
Yeah, that's well said. And, I know we actually use it as a team building exercise to be able to look at each other's strengths and have greater appreciation for what each individual is bringing to the table. When I facilitated leadership retreats for entrepreneurs before, it's really fascinating what happens when you reveal the dynamics of the team to the team. And to the leader, it's obvious, but to the team, it's like, oh, that's why that person always rubs me wrong. Or that's why we approach this task completely differently. And, it's like it can really diffuse that I do it the right way, you do it the wrong way. Or, when you're needing somebody to approach a task in a certain way and it's just not their strength, you can have a greater appreciation for a different way to get to the same successful results. So I think it's a really valuable process for teams. I'm really, really curious. How did you get to the point where this became your calling in life and the work that you decided to do? I want to hear more about your journey and what got you here.
Well, fascinatingly enough, it was actually a strengths methodology. I was leaving my corporate role and I was sort of in between the work and my corporate identity and my identity as an entrepreneur, which hadn't even really been established. And I was having a bad day. I didn't have very many of them, but it was a bad day. And a colleague called me into her office and she insisted I go buy the book, Now Discover Your Strengths by Marcus Buckingham.
Yes.
And I did that. I took the online assessment, and it was a lens through which I saw everything for the next 2 years. So the very first 2 years of business building, back in 2006 and 2007 and into 2008, I used that book, the assessment, the strengths-based assessment, as a litmus test about things I would want to try, projects I'd want to take on, opportunities that I'd want to seize. And it absolutely made all the difference. It made it a really joyous, fun, exciting, energizing opportunity. And I've never been a business owner before. So I am absolutely confident that that made a huge difference in my being able to sort of manage through those first couple of years, which can be tough for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. If you're a small business owner working way too much in your business, then you're not really putting your business to work for you. And you could benefit greatly by learning how to develop a team of world-class players to help you accomplish more and literally free you up to get more done. Now, we all want to shatter our income goals. We all want to be able to accomplish much greater results, but it's really difficult to do if you don't know how to delegate masterfully and be able to get the right things off your plate to the right people who will really get things done. That's where the power of the virtual team comes in. Be sure to get your copy right now at virtualteamebook.com. And you shared with us in your introduction that you're an executive coach. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, in this trajectory out of corporate America into being a coach and building your business around that service, what would you feel has been one of your greatest challenges that you had to conquer to continue to do the work that you love?
I think it's about always understanding that, particularly when you're a solopreneur or you're in a small group, that you can't do it all. You know, and as much as I would like to, again, I mentioned love of learning is one of my top strengths. I would love to carve out more time for reading, and there's always projects on the back burner that I can't wait to get to that I have to accept won't get done. And maybe they'll never get done. But it's really about being very mindful and very focused on what my values and my strengths are and deciding what comes first. And so only having 1 to 3 priorities makes all the difference in the world. Because having been overwhelmed in the corporate world, I made a conscious decision wanting a different type of lifestyle, that I did not become sort of a different version of myself in the entrepreneurial world. So it's really about being really clear about what's important and about managing priorities around my strengths and values.
It's funny you said becoming the same version of yourself in your own business. That's exactly what I did.
Yes.
I came out of corporate America and I just recreated the whole thing. I'm like, oh my God, I left my company to actually have freedom and I don't have any of that. So that's very, very true. So I'm also really curious about, that love of learning. And I don't know many people who don't have a love of learning in my world, but how often does that help kind of get you into that bright, shiny object syndrome where everything's an equal opportunity? And I know you filter against your values, but I'm just kind of curious how that works for you.
Well, I'm sort of like N of 1 case study, right? So I have to deal with that with my clients all the time. We have so much information coming at us, and creative people in business and in entrepreneurship, that's exactly it. So it's about having systems in place so that that shiny object gets sort of recorded and it can go on the back burner and it can be left for a time where I can dedicate to looking at all those opportunities and deciding which ones move forward. But it is a work in progress. I have finely honed systems over the last 8 years that I have developed. Again, only having 3 priorities for a day makes a big difference. I've custom developed my own day timer, turning devices off. We're in an absolute time of information overload and with such incredible distraction that our brains are not capable of attending to the same level of detail that we could say 10 or 20 years ago. So I'm very, very conscious of that. It's an integrity piece for me. If I'm talking to my clients about that, I need to be able to do it myself. So turning devices off, absolutely critical. Knowing that my best hours are between 7 and 11 o'clock, and that's where I get all my creative work done. Really having systems in place. And I should say, I got that tip from Charlie Gilkey, who's at Productive Flourishing. He's a business coach, and he's probably got more tips on his little baby finger than I have probably my entire office in terms of how to be really productive in a small business.
Yeah, well said. So let's say somebody wants to learn more about their own strengths. Obviously, we'll share your website, but what steps should they go through? Because there's a lot of different strengths finder type, resources out there. What do you recommend that somebody does?
Well, the first and easiest thing is sometimes just to sit back over a period of a week and just jot down in a notebook. And I know Marcus Buckingham talks about this in one of his books. It's really just being mindful and aware of the things that really light you up. And don't judge it, don't censor it, because when you go back over a 2-week period or a week period, things will start to sort of bubble up and you'll see the dots connect. So that in and of itself can be a really great thing. So if you have an hour of time and there's something that you want to do, what is it that you're doing? How are you engaging with that piece of content? That could be a really good sort of a sense of what your strengths are. Second one is to ask people around you what, when you're at your best, how are you engaging with them? What kinds of things are you doing? How are you showing up? And people who are often truthful, and if you start to hear the same kinds of feedback time and time again, that might be also a clue as to what your strengths are. And third, and certainly not least, again, there are lots of strengths assessments. No one is better than another. Again, I mentioned VIA because it's free. It's available to the public, but there are others. But obviously, Realize 2 is a UK group that they've just recently rebranded. And apologies, I can't remember their rebranded name, but that's a great strengths assessment. Gallup has one, of course. Marcus Buckingham has one. So they're all excellent. I think they're all tools as long as they get you to that core of who you are at your best. Then I think I'm an advocate of all of them.
Great. That's helpful. I know somebody turned me on one time to Strengths Finders 2.0.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's some resource in the back of that book as well.
Yes.
So your website, how do they contact you?
Yeah, so I am at www.natalie, Natalie, G is in good, Currie, CURRIE.com. So natalieg.com.
Great, thank you. And of course, Natalie's a great resource to help you facilitate these experiences and create greater insight into your own leadership and your team support. So Natalie, as we start to wrap up here, I'm really curious, two kind of just random questions to share a resource that helped you as you were really anchoring yourself as a business owner. What was like your favorite book that really helped you with your being able to make your business work better?
That's a great question. And again, the love of learning, I can probably think of about 20.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a hard question for you.
It's such a hard one. The one that I'm going to think about just based on our conversation is by, I think his name's Tony Schwartz, and it's The Power of Paradox. And I think I've got the title wrong. I have it on my bookshelf. And it's really talking about that we live in times of overwhelm and how we have a difficult time. The human brain does not like to have to make choices. So that's a really powerful read and really helped me crystallize how I could sort of fine tune my systems and really think about things in a much more effective way.
I'm going to get that on audiobook. I'm looking for a new audiobook, and I've heard of that a couple times, but I never read it. So good one. And do you have a favorite quote that helps you stay inspired to do the work that you do?
It's an interesting one. It's actually from my husband, and it is what it is. And that may seem like an odd, inspiring quote, but what it does is it reminds me that I don't need to be in control of all things at all times.
What? Come on.
So I've learned that the hard way. And so it is what it is allows me to recognize where I can have impact and where I can learn and grow. And I can just easily, or as easily as possible, let the rest go and let life and the universe manage that. And if I can manage myself, then it's been a good day.
And I think that ties so nicely into what you were saying earlier, as your great strength is love of learning. learners are always going to come up with new ideas. And at a certain point, you kind of have to let go of a lot of those ideas so that you can make progress. Because it's very easy to get bogged down in, I have all these things I want to do. I have all these ideas. One of my sayings is, just because you have a great idea doesn't mean you have to do it. Doesn't mean you have to take action on it. Doesn't mean it has to get your attention right now. It actually doesn't mean you ever have to do a thing with it. It's just an idea. So I love that you're saying earlier you have systems, which is what I teach my clients to do. Have systems to make decisions. What's going to get your time? What's going to get your attention? What's going to get your resources before you start putting them into action? And I know there's a lot of really creative people that just cringe with that idea. Trust me, it takes a little bit of like learning this new discipline, but it will help propel you forward instead of kind of inching along all the time.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah. So now if we could leave our listeners with just one piece of sage advice around how to really embrace our strengths, what would it be?
What one piece of advice? I think it's about, again, sort of feeding into the last quote. I think it's about letting go of your weaknesses, being okay with the fact that you don't have to be all things to all people. Be the best version of yourself, continually learn and grow, and let other people be their best versions of themselves. And I think we'll all be in a better place.
Yeah, that means you have to stop comparing yourself from everybody else. So just listen to that. That's really wise, sage advice. When you start comparing yourself to others, you're going to lose your acceptance and really embracing your own strengths. So thank you, Natalie, for bringing that to us. And as you're listening in today, we really want to encourage you to think about what strength do you need to really embrace more of? That one that if you were to spend more time like in it, it would light you up. It would make things feel so much more effortless instead of effortful. Feel free to come over to the show page at melaniebensonstrick.com. You can just type in the search bar strengths with Natalie and come join us for the conversation. Tell us, what will you focus on in your strengths? And is there something you maybe need to let go of because it's in your weak zone and it's just making you feel depleted that you keep trying to grow it and make it work better, right? So I'm Melanie Benson-Strick. This has been a great talk with Natalie Currie today. Look forward to seeing you again next week. And we've got another exciting episode of Power Up lined up for you. Bye for now.